Welcome back to another episode of Dear Founder. I'm very excited about today's guest. She and I met on Instagram, which is kind of just like it's not a new thing, but it's definitely like a newer thing for me, right? To have all of these amazing contacts and connections and amazing female founders that I have met over Instagram and then have gone on to have incredible conversations with. Sallie Holder is the founder and CEO of the Brimm and the Beyond Rock Middle movement. And I love what she's doing because she supports female founders in just in the biggest way possible. And we had a conversation on her podcast a few weeks ago. You should absolutely listen to it. If you haven't already, we're going to link it in the show notes, but we're going to continue the conversation here today on Dear Founder. So Sallie, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Lindsay. I'm excited to be here. In fact, you should definitely listen to that episode. I just got a message from one of our listeners saying that it is one of their very favorite episodes, and they had been binging the podcast and they just were raving about the woman from Bump Club. And I said,
Oh my
she
God.
is just a fantastic person. So I had to share that.
Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
That makes
So
me
nice
so
to hear.
happy. But it's so fun when you get to continue these conversations, right? I've done a couple of pod swaps and it just makes so much sense to hear the other side of the story. And I'm so excited that we're doing this. So thank you.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
So tell us a little bit about your background. Get us up to speed. I want to know how you got to where you are today. I want to know what is the Brimm and what is the Beyond Rock Middle movement. I mean, there's a lot of things to unpack here. So I'm going to give you the floor. Take us through your history.
Okay, yeah, sure. So, right now I always tell people what I do is I help make women more money. And the reason why I start with that is that I practiced law for 10 years doing labor and employment litigation. And I had the opportunity to work with some of the largest companies in the world. But when I went to bed at night, I just wasn't feeling that sense of fulfillment that I wanted to feel. I think that we all know what I mean by that, right? We're all in search of actual contentment. And I jokingly say, but it's true. I didn't sleep better at night knowing that I saved FedEx $1 million, right? It was lovely. It was a good thing, right? To win a case or to, have a situation go our way, but it wasn't leaving me with that level of excitement. And so I knew I came from a family of entrepreneurs and that I had the entrepreneurial bug. I just wasn't really sure how it was going to play out for me. And because everyone kept offering me the opportunity to go and start my own law firm, right? And I find when we choose a career at the beginning of our lives, right? I was 24 when I started practicing law, that everyone tries to keep you in that particular box. And I didn't want to stay there. So, I continued to push back on that entrepreneurial adventure, believing that I wouldn't have another one and I just couldn't figure out another way. So eventually I had the opportunity to be the chief operating officer of a law firm. So that ended up being my nice foray outside of law. And once I did that, I really realized, gosh, I like running companies. My degree was in organizational development, human and organizational development, actually, from Vanderbilt. And so I had this, love of companies and organizations. And now I had all of this experience with the employer-employee relationship that it really made sense to run a company. So I did the COO thing for about 6 years with 6 different companies over that period of time. And then I had a female founder actually come to me and say, hey, would you coach us instead of coming on board with us full time? And I really didn't know anything about coaching at that time. As you can imagine, when you're an attorney, coaching is not something you're offered very much. Neither is mentorship. At least it was not for me in this really large firm that I was in. And so I was intrigued by the concept, and that's how I ended up in coaching. I started doing one-on-one, and then I realized, gosh, I would sleep better at night. This is where I've been meant to be all along. And, everything we do leads us in, I believe, a better direction and has this right thread of continuity. And all of those experiences led me to where I am today, to start the company and the Brimm, meaning I think that we as women collectively are better off working together towards this big overall mission of helping women own a space of multi-million dollar companies. And I just have this firm underlying belief that the world would be a better place if more women had more money in their pockets. And so it's built upon that idea and that foundation. And we do provide a revenue accelerator program. So the intent behind the company is to really accelerate female founders' revenue, to get them to be 7-figure founders. And there are specific strategies and tactics associated with being able to do that. So we teach you exactly how to do that.
So when someone comes to the Brimm, what can they expect? Because there are a lot of things that you offer.
Mhm. Yeah. So what we like to do is have an introductory call. I think it's so important for us to find out if there is a strategic fit. We want to work with, women who are excited about creating that 7-figure growth. And that generally means that you are looking to put in a certain amount of hours. You likely are looking to hire. You're looking to create systems and processes. And not everyone wants that, which is fine. We just want to be the avenue for the women that do. And to tell them, there are a lot of other coaches out there that specialize in the startup and the very beginning phases, and they specialize in helping you create a great side hustle or something just, that is only on social media. And I found that there was this real lack for the very serious female founder that wanted, the strategies, like I said, and the tactics that gives them that full roadmap to building out that long-term business and achieving this bigger vision that they have. So, I wanted to develop a system and a methodology that I could deliver to them that I knew would produce results. And so I've developed that roadmap, and we deliver it in this 12-month coaching program. So you come in and we have an initial call to make sure that we're a fit and that we give you the right information, and that you're ready for that type of growth, and that's what you want. And then if you are, then, because we don't want you to waste your money or your time, right? I mean, two of the most valuable resources you have. And so we want to make sure we can give you exactly what you need and deserve as a female founder, because we want more women in business long term. So,
Okay, so
yeah.
I'd like to go back to kind of when you made that shift over to starting the Brimm, because I
Yeah.
think that is really the like, it's a sticking point for a lot of female founders when they're going from this job in this career that, oftentimes it's more than a job. It's a career that they've known for many years. It's all that they know. And they think they want to do something else, and they're not quite sure, but they have an inkling, and they might have an epiphany. But a lot of people get stuck with how to make that shift. And so how and when was it that you were able to really switch off the career of, Sallie as an attorney to Sallie as the founder of the Brimm?
Yeah. I mean, gosh, that was such a hard transition. Um, for so many reasons, right? That was my identity, right? And we, take on the title of our jobs very often as a big part of our identity. So, this is what I ended up writing a book about, called Hitting Rock Middle. And what I realized was that there was a middle place where you can very much get stuck, where a lot of people identify with you serving in one box, one role. And oftentimes you're seeking something that looks radically different because you realize that's not giving you what you thought it would. And so I started by, it sounds so simple, but we just stopped doing it at some point, by dreaming again, right? So, um, I let myself believe that again, anything was possible, that, if I threw absolutely everything in the middle that I had done and believed and thought I was, and I got to only remove the pieces and parts that I actually wanted to keep right now, right? The 35-year-old version of me was so different than the right 24-year-old version, right? If I pull out now only the parts that I really want to identify with at this point in my life, they're different, and that's okay. We're going to change, and I hope they're different because I'm going to grow along the way. And I couldn't find an exact roadmap of how to get out of that place because everybody kept coming back to me and being like, "Oh, you must be so happy because you're successful." And I was like, "But I'm not. I'm miserable." And I felt like there was this secret I was keeping. And I couldn't find anybody else that would talk about the fact that I could simultaneously be externally successful and internally miserable. And to me, that's exactly what rock middle is. And I, in the book, wrote out exactly the roadmap of getting out of that place. With a lovely acronym of Be Bolder. And that all started with beginning to dream again. Yeah. And somewhere along the way, I had found I had made some decisions about what was possible and what wasn't. And all of those decisions were actually just feelings, right? I was caught up in what other people would think. I was caught up in, my perception of success and titles and all the things. Um, but the great news I can tell you after surviving it all is none of that stuff is true, right? You can reinvent yourself at any point. And I'm so grateful that I have now, which is, yeah,
So
what
it's
other people
I
need to
think
hear,
that
I
the
think.
advice to start dreaming again is amazing advice. But it's one thing to dream and it's another thing to act, right?
Mhm.
So you decide you have this idea and you want to make it a business. How do you do that? I mean, how do you decide you're going to cut the cord and you're going to start this business, and where do you get your first clients, because you need clients if you're going to make money?
Right. So, I like to think of it as a roadmap of your life, right? You would never get in your car and start driving and then be like, I hope I land in a cool place. No, you would actually build out exactly how you're going to get there. And you would start out with your destination. And that's what I tell people all the time. You know, had I gotten really clear about the vision for my life and the destination that I wanted to create, then I probably would have let myself off the hook of practicing law a lot earlier. And by creating the destination, I mean, you need to have two really critical goals, right? You need to have income goals and then you need to have lifestyle goals. Those two things, A plus B equals C, which is the fulfillment. And most people only make income goals. They do not make lifestyle goals. And by lifestyle, I mean, how often do you want to be working? What do you want, Fridays to look like? Do you want the flexibility and freedom? Do you want, control over your schedule? What creates true success in terms of your lifestyle? And I did want freedom and flexibility, which does not work very well with a judge and a courtroom, and a scheduling order. So, had I thought through those things, I would have realized, gosh, it's far more than a title and money. And so I tell people, create that first, right? And make sure that you have that destination. Once you do, then it's going to tell you, okay, then if my income goals are, let's say, 100,000, and my lifestyle goal is to work, right, 3 days a week on this, while I build up a client base, then you can begin very small and ask yourself one simple question, which is, okay, what's the next step? Right? That's it. right? We get very overwhelmed because we then want to know how we're going to reach that destination. But once you know where you're headed, then you can put everything through that particular filter, saying, okay, does this help me get closer to that place or does it not? So you're asking yourself, does this next step, does this next action lead me there, or does it not? And at least then you are developing, right, that true roadmap along the way. I think this quote really sums it up well, which is, be clear on your destination, but fluid on how you get there. How is going to change, right? You can come up with the best map in the world, but things are going to come up, people are going to cancel, conversions won't happen when you thought they would, and that's okay. But if you're fluid and you're okay with that, then you realize you can survive because you're still headed where you want to go.
I want to know how you got there because you
Mhm.
like how did you convince people that you were that they should buy your services and they should sign up to work with you? You were a lawyer. I mean, yes, you were the COO of a law firm and whatnot, but there's still something to be said about making that shift and convincing people that you were providing them with a service they couldn't live without. So how did you get there?
Yeah. Great question. I mean, one thing that women especially have to invest in is their own confidence, right? We've got to understand the value that we bring to the table. And, I always say do some research, right? So that's exactly what I did. I got my hands on every single book out there that I possibly could on coaching, on scaling a business. And I didn't start out with a particular specialty or I started out working with female founders that wanted one on one coaching and guidance on making that initial career transition. So it was something that I had just done, right? I had just built that particular roadmap. So I felt very confident about my ability to guide them through something I just experienced. So, I would say, look at the value you can bring to the table. Begin by just making a list of all of the things that you have done and have accomplished over the course of your career. You will realize that your experiences hold a tremendous amount of value and that there are other people that are coming behind you that need to know what you just experienced. And a lot of, like I said, my beginning, you know, career was about sharing that journey with them, helping them make that particular transition because I got it. I was, in there with them in the same exact way. And oftentimes, too, what you'll find is all you have to do is be one step ahead of where the rest of your clients are, right? You don't have to be 15 steps ahead. And oftentimes, if you are, then you can't remember, right? You're not close enough to it, either emotionally or, you can't remember just how hard it is, or you can't identify with them. So it's not a bad thing that you aren't, 15 steps ahead and, you have it so scaled that, you're barely involved in, exactly where the clients are. So, I recognized my own value. I made a list of what I could offer. I got really clear on what the problems were that other people were experiencing. And then I began to talk to other people, right? I always say make a list of your 10 low hanging fruit and start there. Just get yourself out of there and begin having meetings. Talk to other people about what they're struggling with, ask questions, make notes about the problems other people are experiencing, and then figure out, right, what the combination is between the value that you have, right, that experience, and the problems they're having. And there is overlay there, right? You have had experiences that can solve the very problems they're having, and then you figure out how to present it to them in that way.
How long did it take before you got your first client?
Oh gosh. Um, I would say it took a good 5 months, right? It took a lot longer than people are willing to give it today. They want to reach out to 10 people, have an instantaneous success, and determine right away whether they can or cannot pursue this. And that's not how it goes, right? at
I
all.
really appreciate you saying that. And that's something that as I am a year into this phase of my career, am going to be starting to talk about a lot more because when I left Bump Club, Bump Club became my client. So I was really lucky, right? Like I had this built-in client already and they were my client. And then I randomly got a connection that I got a second client. And, I had this one other client but then it was like kind of slow moving and I had like a few clients at once, but like it took a while and it's taken a while for me to get to a point where I like am now choosing what I get to do. At first I felt like I was just taking everything and I was doing it and doing it well, but one, I wanted to get the experience of different projects and working with different types of people to see what I liked the most. Right. And that was like
Yep.
the first thing. And then the second thing was that, it was, it, I couldn't, I'm trying to figure out the balance between doing the work for the clients and putting myself out there. So there's that piece of it as well. And now I'm at a point where I'm getting a lot of inquiries for my services and I'm able to say, okay, well, I think I'm going to do this and I'm going to maybe not do this, or this isn't a fit. And I'm picking the projects that I want to work on now. And I'm helping the people that I want to help. And I appreciate you saying that because it doesn't happen overnight.
No, it doesn't. I always tell clients, entrepreneurship and especially creating a seven-figure business is a lot like, survival of the fittest, right? It's just those who are willing to continue to come back and iterate, right? You find out what you like, and then you realize, gosh, there are still parts of it that I don't like, and I want to incorporate this piece. And now let me go out into the world and try to service that client again and see how it goes. And then you realize, oh, wait a minute, I don't want to serve men. Let me cut that out. Now let me realize, well, what portion of the female founder's business do I really feel most passionate about? Right. And you continue to whittle it down and refine and refine and refine over time. And but the biggest piece of advice I could give, new founders is just pick a niche and start, right? Pick a lane and stay in that particular lane. And you can always change it. But where I see people go wrong, especially at the beginning, is they attempt to serve everyone in an effort to try to gain as many clients. But what they don't realize is, right, when you stand for everything, you stand for nothing. And therefore, you are not going to attract prospective clients to you as quickly as you would if you just planted your flag and you said, this is all I do. I do this one thing, I do it really, really well. And that is one of the things that contributed to the quick growth of one-on-one coaching at the beginning. Was ultimately, I realized, okay, it is niching down. It's being very specific. I only serve women. I serve women who are making the transition from corporate to the entrepreneurial environment and wanting a roadmap to do that. So once I realized this is exactly how I need to talk about what I do, and I was able to differentiate myself in that way, then people were able to refer me. So that is when word of mouth began to grow. And then that is when my client base began to grow
This
as
is
well.
such good advice for everyone who is listening. This is such good advice. And I am also a testament to that as well. Like when I first started, I was like marketing consultant and it was too much. Like,
Yeah.
and even my best friend said to me, like, I know you know how to do all this stuff, but you can't really do all this stuff. I mean, it can come in bits and pieces throughout the work that you're doing, but when you're putting yourself out there, you have to be specific. And she was right. And you were right. And what did I do? I said to myself, what do I love doing? What do I want to do? And I love to build community. And so now I help people build and monetize community, period. And
Yes.
like that's one sentence. How do we do it? Social media, emails, content. I mean, all those things come into play, but I build and monetize communities. And that's what happens. And you get bottom line growth from that. And so thank you for saying that, because I also think that so many of us are, to your point, want to show up and be everything to everyone. And you find more success when you niche down and when you are very specific about what it is that you do.
Yes. I think, I don't want to get on a long tangent about this. I just think that, especially for our female listeners, there's a tremendous amount of fear around saying no. That especially to anyone at the very beginning stages, because they're worried that that will give the impression out to others or in the world that they are not likable. And let me be the first to tell you that it is the exact opposite. You know, women have been conditioned for a really long time and told in order to be well liked, you have to be pleasing, you have to be nice, you have to be kind to everyone, say yes, and all of that. Well, let me tell you, in the business world, which when they taught us those quote unquote rules of the game, how to be likable, they didn't ever expect that we would be business owners. They were never putting it in the context of the business world. And so in the business world, in order for you to create that very critical know, like, and trust factor, you can't say yes all the time. In fact, it is the exact opposite. The more often you say no, right, the more likely you are creating this perception that you are in demand, that you have a very, you know, well-oiled machine. You have a great understanding of what you do well and what you don't. And all of those things exemplify that you are a professional. And that's what we need to understand very much as women, that saying no, even at the beginning, is absolutely a good thing and will not destroy your likability for the future.
I love that. And I couldn't agree with you more. So thank you for saying that. I want to kind of get into the Beyond Rock Middle movement and how that came about, and where did that, like, you talked a little bit about it at the top of the conversation, but when did that become a thing? How did that become about? And how did you decide to write it in a book?
Yeah. Well, when I started writing the book, I was so frustrated because, like I said, I couldn't find a roadmap where someone was saying, okay, when you have a successful career, this is how you transition out of the mat and slowly but surely create an entrepreneurial journey. Like, where is that book? I couldn't find it. And so I told myself, if I ever actually make this full transition, I am going to show other people how to do it too. Because it is like a seesaw, right? At the beginning, you are very, all of your revenue or income at that point, not revenue, but income is coming from your full-time job, and you're starting something slowly. It's just a seed, right? You're beginning with your dreams, and then you're beginning to get action oriented and hold yourself out. And it starts with one client and it builds from there, one client at a time. And you switch the seesaw then to begin to slowly let go and pull back on, right, maybe the income that you have in your corporate world. You begin to transition maybe to a little bit more part-time, and then pulling back and, slowly flipping the other direction to your reliance on your entrepreneurial venture for your income and your revenue versus your full-time job. And everything that I could find in the marketplace all talked about you're at the bottom of the barrel, right? You're at rock bottom and you need to pull yourself up. This is how you get started, right? Or it was, this is how I created my $100 million company and sold it, for $1 billion. And I was like, where is the middle ground? What's in the middle? And, so I figured if I could create some terminology around that middle, then maybe more people would talk about it, because there's got to be more people out there that feel like I do. So I wrote the book. It came out, Lindsay, in January of 2020.
So you were probably getting ready for a book tour when COVID hit.
Yes, I was on the book tour. I was in Minneapolis, March 14th. I will never forget when I got a call and they're like, you have to fly home. And I'm saying, why? And they say, your kids are out of school for the next 2 weeks. And I'm thinking, oh, this will be a lovely break from the book tour. I have 22 more cities to go to. So I'll take a 2-week break and then I'll come back, because I had let go of all of my one-on-one coaching clients in advance of the book tour, because again, I'm always about them having the best experience, and that wasn't going to give them a great experience. So here I was, no book tour, now no revenue because I have no clients. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh gosh, I'm at the beginning again. What am I going to do?
So what'd you do?
So I went for my, COVID hiatus, and as any good entrepreneur does, I say if I'm starting all over again, then I can create anything that I want. And what I really wanted, much like were so passionate about, what I really wanted, and had learned from the one-on-one coaching, is that I wanted to be surrounded by other women who were great go-getters as well. I wanted to find other women who believed what I believed. And I wanted, so many of my one-on-one clients would say, this is so great. I want to know that other people are doing this as well. And I would tell them stories of other clients of mine, but it wasn't the same. So that's when, I came up with the idea that it would be a movement, and that these would all be women who would raise their hands saying, I want to move us collectively as women together in the direction of having more seven-figure female founders, right? As soon as I knew that the statistics were that 98% of us never reached that seven-figure mark, I was like, well, that's just appalling. And, we can do something about it. And so if we all get together, then we can do it together. And that was the idea, that if we created a group coaching program that pulled everyone together, they could experience together, have less loneliness. It's always one of the things that entrepreneurship is the worst, about, is experiencing that loneliness, and especially during COVID. So it really kind of took off from there. A lot of women raised their hand and said, yeah, me too. I don't want to be alone in this, but I want to create something big and amazing.
So I want to point out to everyone who's listening, even though it's going to be in the show notes, that USA Today called Sallie's book a top book that will change your life in 2021. And that's a really big feather in your cap. So congratulations on that, first of all.
Thank you.
I mean, that's a really big fucking deal. So
it is.
I want to say that.
Definitely cried tears of joy that day and was like, oh my gosh, is this real? This is amazing.
And so I would love for you to, yes, you have the group coaching, you have the one-on-one coaching, you have the book, but what can people expect when they pick up your book? Why does it change people's life?
I think the number one comment I get from strangers is, wow, you were incredibly vulnerable. Because it is not just a superficial how-to overview at all. I tell my entire story about the fact that I did use alcohol throughout my journey to numb the pain that I was experiencing along the way. What we tend to find is that people have to be in enough pain in order to precipitate change. And that was exactly what happened to me. And for a very long time, I wanted to ignore the pain. And the best way for me personally to do that was through alcohol. And so there were a lot of things that I had to face and had to challenge myself on, like, is alcohol getting in my way of, evolving and growing? And I had to realize it was. So during this whole journey, I got sober. I completely changed my approach to life. And so, I talk about all of that really in depth and honestly about my worst, darkest days. And, just I hope that shows people that, you can experience some bad things and they may be self-inflicted. And, if you experience any shame around those, I get it. I was there. But it doesn't have to hold you back forever, right? At some point we can make a choice to turn them into something great. And so I think it's the vulnerability that I hear most about.
And I talk a lot about that. That's something that I talk a lot about, that when you put your shit out there, it's like a magnet that brings people to you, and people don't want to be working with some person who's like perfection. They want to know you're human. And when you show your shit, people gravitate towards that because that they have shit too, right? And so,
oh my God, so true.
And it's like I didn't even realize at the time with Bump Club, right? Like that I was like, oh, like, my ankles are fat and swollen, and like, oh, I have gestational diabetes. But then I would talk about it and people would be like, oh my God, and so, but it's like, it's like when you talk about the things that no one talks about, I do think it propels you into a level of success and connection that you probably didn't expect.
Oh, so true. Like, I had no idea that it would resonate with people in the way that it has. I mean, just to even get to see how many women now are entrepreneurs because they read the book, like to see physical, like brick and mortar locations that I know that I even got to play a small part in is, I mean, I have chill bumps right now. And I think too, we have to keep sharing the shit, right?
Hmm.
Because it does keep coming. It's not like, oh, you figure it out and you get to the top of the mountain and you get to stay there, right? There's always going to be a different hill to climb. And there are going to be a lot of peaks, but there are going to be a lot of valleys too. And, I experienced another one this year, right? I got divorced this year. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through, worse than sobriety. And but I experienced the most personal growth, and we can only go professionally where we're willing to go personally. And if we're willing to really challenge ourselves personally to, face things that aren't serving us in whatever way, shape, or form, or that, we're willing to get really honest about the fact that, we just haven't been showing up in the way that we should, or that we can't do it all, then that's the starting place. That's not the end. That's when you begin to see the growth and experience of things that you want, just like you were saying. I mean, I think that we have to keep talking about the fact that all of this is going to keep coming. You just get better at handling it, right? It's like a workout. Like,
Yes.
your muscles get stronger. You know how, oh, yes, I recognize this. I remember this feeling again, and I'm going to make it to the other side. Because you always will, right?
Yes.
You survive 100% of your most awful days.
So I'd love for you to share a little bit about where the Brim is going, because you just recently announced some exciting news, and you've really grown this brand, both the Brim and the movement, the rock metal movement, to encompass a lot of different facets and a lot of different revenue streams. And I think that's important too, because you don't, to your point before with like the COVID example, you want to have different options because you don't want all your eggs in one basket. You never know what's going to happen. So I'd love for you to kind of share now where you guys are headed, because it's not just one-on-one coaching. It's not just group coaching. It's not just your book. You have a lot going on.
Yeah. So, I'm really proud of the expansion that we've had. I'm always looking at, again, where are female entrepreneurs? Where are they getting stuck in this particular process? So, I did develop a few online courses that I love. And I've just literally this morning, Lindsay, finished a sales program, sales course. Doesn't even have a name, but good Lord, we as women hate sales. So I was like, I just want to tackle this beast. And so we have a lot of self-guided tools now that need to be some people's entry point into this world of coaching and what it looks like just to get help, right? And then that can open them up to realizing that getting help isn't a bad thing. So, we have those available on our website now, which I love. And then, I'm so excited that we have just added 3 new full-time coaches that are going to be coaching, one on the West Coast in California, one in Florida, one in New Jersey. And so that's going to really help us be able to serve more women. I really was at max capacity, and I'm thrilled, and that'll help us serve different time zones, right? It's just more about, there are more women out there to reach. And
Yeah.
so thrilled about that. And then I'm going on a little road show this fall. So that's very exciting. I think we've announced 3 cities, but I know that we have 16 set.
Oh my
So,
God.
yep, there are a lot of locations that we're going to over the course of this fall. And I'm sure that we'll continue that because, making that one-on-one in-person connection is so important, to building the trust that people need in order to begin to be vulnerable about the help that they and the support they need. So, I'm going to be doing those myself personally and leading people in those workshops around the country. So I'm thrilled about that. And that will help more women see that they can participate in, right, one of our online courses, one-on-one coaching, or the TRA, the Revenue Accelerator program. So all of that going on. And then, of course, the podcast too. So
You're a
busy,
busy
but
lady.
I wouldn't have it any other way.
I'm
Yeah,
really excited for you. Congratulations.
thank you so much.
So before we wrap up, I want to ask you what I ask everyone, and that is 3 actionable tips that you would give female founders who are, just starting out, or maybe they've gotten their feet wet a little bit, but they're stuck. Like, what would you tell founders?
I would first say the antidote to fear is clarity every time. So continue to remind yourself that anytime you feel, quote unquote stuck, most of the time that is a feeling driven by fear. And that can be cured by you gaining clarity about what it is you want to create and where it is you want to go. So go back and reconnect with your vision and then come up with a day-to-day strategy on how you're going to get there. The second tip I would give founders is sell, sell, sell. 80% of your time at the beginning, especially, but really 80% of your time ought to be spent on selling, 20% of your time on executing the rest of the work. Now, people freak out about that statistic, but selling is a very big, expansive term. And so networking, connecting with people, following up with people, right? Spend a tremendous amount of your time and put that at the forefront of every single day. It takes more time than you think it does, and it always will pay off if you keep at it, right? Remember, people tend to convert after their 4th interaction with you, sometimes up to 7. So you can see that the runway needs to be long, and that's why you have to keep after it. And that probably, I guess, goes into my last tip for all of them would be track your actions. There is no way that you are going to remember it all. So start early and often with tracking your sales actions, right? Who do you have an intention of working with? And pick out 10 each and every week and move them through your particular sales process with warming them up, following up, and attempting to convert them. But track it. You will not realize that part of the problem is you just haven't reached out to that many people. And you've got to reach out to 10 to even remotely give yourself a chance of success. And oftentimes when I come back to founders, I say, how much time have you put into this? And they say very little. I'm putting all my time into creating content or being on social media or all of that. And I'm like, that's just an awareness tool, guys. It's not a conversion tool. It's just awareness.
Yep.
You've got to sell to convert and to make money. We cannot forget the sales piece. So get out there, do it, stay committed, and you can make it happen, right? It's just survival.
Sallie Holder, founder and CEO of the Brimm and the Beyond Rock Middle movement. Thank you so much for being here. These tips are amazing. You have given me a lot to think about, so I appreciate it. And I'm so excited to see where this goes, and I can't wait to catch up with you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me.